Welcome to Introspection, the podcast about moving from grief to growth. I'm Amy Lindner-Lesser, your host. Introspection started out as a podcast about hospitality, innkeeping, and innkeepers. After about a year, I realized that my life and interests have morphed from hospitality to helping others navigate from grief and loss to growth and living. In this new version of Introspection, I will be talking about my personal experiences with loss, and there are quite a few, what I've learned along the way through my professional training, as well as from my coaching experiences. I'll also be bringing in guests to share interesting ideas. So grab a beverage, find a comfy place, take a deep breath, and listen in. Welcome everybody to Introspection. My guest today is Judy Seaman from Video Memoir Creations. I know Judy from my former life as an innkeeper in Lenox. We met through the Jewish Federation in Hadassah, and Judy has been doing video for many years. She worked on a project for the town of Lenox, and my former inn was in that. And I got a chance to work with her and a drone, which was really fascinating. So we're going to talk a little bit about memoirs and video. I think it's really appropriate because as we talk about grief and loss, we can think about the fact that the reality is nobody gets out of this life alive, that we all end up leaving this plane, this earth. And I think that a memoir, especially a video memoir, is a wonderful way to leave a legacy to your family, to your community, to your friends. And I want Judy to tell us all about that. So Judy, welcome. And let's start with how you got involved in doing this.
Well, first of all, Amy, thank you for having me. This is really exciting to be on your podcast. I've been working as a film editor for many years, since I don't even want to tell you how many years. And I used to edit news and sports, believe it or not. And then I made some documentaries, and I've always thought video. So when I moved to Lenox, Massachusetts in 2010, I knew that Great Barrington was just about to observe their 250th, and they were planning things. And I was working there in the beginning when I first moved up to the Berkshires. And I would come home and pass the sign that said, "Welcome to Lenox, established 1767." And I realized, well, we're only 6 years behind Great Barrington. We should do something. So I started on my own, just interviewing people. I knew a few people, and I just started interviewing them. Where did you grow up? Oh, you grew up in Lenox or Lenoxdale. What was it like? Where are your ancestors from? And I found that fascinating. So when finally, I think it was in 2013, a committee was formed in Lenox, 250th committee, I presented my idea. And then in the end, I had a friend who worked with me. We interviewed 62 people. And it was just fascinating learning their stories. It wasn't about the buildings of Lenox. It was about the personal stories of these people who grew up here and their parents who worked as servants in the Gilded Age. It was incredible. Nothing I had really known very much about. So I was fascinated. And I think after that, it led to my interest in video memoir on a more personal level.
And you have a short video that talks a little bit about that.
I made a little video for you if you'd like to see it, of one of the people we interviewed who talks about, it's 55 seconds, so feel free.
Okay, Will.
My name is Mary Michael, because there was a nun who asked my mother to have her have me take Michael for a confirmation name. That's why it's strange. Everybody always sort of laughs at me when I tell them that my middle name is Michael. My grandfather, the important thing about him is that he went to the gold rush. When he got back, he had enough money to buy this house. So I guess that's the most important thing about it. We were self-sufficient. Everybody had a pig and a chickens. Couldn't help but like living here. A lot of people came to live here for a short time and never left.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, I love Mary. She was wonderful.
So you took the video that was all about the people in Lenox, and it sparked an interest to do more memoirs.
Definitely. I just felt that people have stories to tell, and I wanted to interview them and use their photographs and old footage. It just feels very important to me to share your stories with your children and grandchildren. And sometimes it's just telling a story telling a part of your life that you hadn't shared before, that's meaningful to you. And I just love hearing those stories.
Who would you say is the typical person who thinks about doing a video memoir? Is it an older person, a person in their middle age, somebody who knows that they're ill? Who is that?
Well, it's a wide range. We've actually done videos for people who are getting married for the second time, and they want to talk about how they met and how their childhoods intertwine somehow later in life. There's so many different stories. A lot of times it is older people that want to tell their children about their interesting careers that they may not have shared. I know my father was a lawyer, and he was, when he was just out of law school, it was World War II, he was some kind of a clerk at the Nuremberg trials, and he would never tell me the stories. And, it's one of those things. Sometimes people say, I wish my father had told me this, or I wish my mother had told me about her childhood. And so that's why I encourage people to ask the questions of your parents. Tell us the stories of your childhood. I want to keep these. And video is just the best way to do it.
And is it usually one story, or is it a life story? Or is there something that's usual or common?
Well, there's never anything that's usual. Everything is different. Everyone is different. It's interesting that people don't realize that often there's a theme that runs through their life or their career or, their role as a parent. And sometimes when they tell these stories to me, we always have a pre-interview and we talk about what is meaningful to them. And sometimes out of this pre-interview or out of the actual interview, which of course I edit, a theme runs through that they never really understood or realized, and that's just wonderful for them and for me to learn that.
And is it usually you asking them the questions, or is there a family member or somebody else with them and a conversation that gets videoed?
Conversation. It really runs the gamut. And I try not to be an interviewer, with specific questions. And by the way, I try not to. We talk about what they want to talk about in a general sense, and we talk about their themes and their hopes and dreams and all that. But I don't give them specific questions, because then it comes with them when it comes to filming, it sort of looks a little stilted. So I don't want to shock them, but I want to get a little bit of a surprise. So you want the emotion to come out. And that's often what happens. And sometimes it's surprising to them. I've never had anyone say, oh gosh, I shed a tear. Don't show that. They want that. They may not realize it at first, but it just becomes a very authentic video for and it's their family legacy. It's their legacy to their children and grandchildren.
Mm-hmm. I know in grief work, one of the things that is really important, if you're talking about your grief and your losses and tears come up, it's important not to stifle them and to try to talk through the tears, because when you stifle them, you stifle the emotion and you don't allow yourself to navigate through that. It just gets stuck someplace in the back of your head, and years later you're doing it again. So it's really important to be able to talk through the tears. And I think it's important, you know, men especially have, grown up, don't cry. Big boys don't cry. And it's unfair to them to not be able to express their emotions and their feelings. So that would be wonderful. And
Sometimes people aren't exactly sure what they want to talk about. And what I ask them is, and I agree with what you're saying. Sometimes the feelings just come out, uh, unexpectedly. And I think when you're in front of the camera, that just makes you more sensitive and emotions come out. And sometimes if people say, "Well, I don't have anything to talk about," I'll say, "Well, what if you had 1 hour to interview the most important person in your life? Could have been a grandmother that wasn't here. Like, what would you have wanted to ask?" And just questions like that. Sometimes I ask people to bring an object with them to talk about. And it's amazing how feelings and stories come out of just holding this object in their hand.
it also shows what's important to them, which object they choose to bring. But that brings up a question for me. Because it's video, do you do things only in person, or do you do things by Zoom or whatever, where you're doing it online for people who are further away from Lennox?
Well, first of all, looking at you now, you look great. I love that you wear this red and your glasses are incredible and your hair. You look great on video. Zoom or whatever we use, works really well. And sometimes they might need to put a lamp, adjust the lighting very simply. They don't need to buy lights or anything. So yeah, and then they send me their photographs, or we incorporate video footage or films like old 16 millimeter or probably Super 8 or 8 millimeter can be transferred, right? Can be transferred to digital format, and I can incorporate that. I do that a lot. I love doing that. I mean, I love my work. I love editing. I went to film school many, many years ago. They couldn't get me out of the editing room. Once I discovered it, it was like the building closed at 11. I had to be at the elevator at 11 o'clock at night. Otherwise, they'd lock me in. So
That might have been fun. And I know for most people, or no, I shouldn't say most, many people, the idea of being on video or on camera is scary. And it is for me. It's one of the things that I've had to work very hard at, not looking at myself or even listening to myself. I remember years ago saying, I just can't stand the way I sound. I sound like a New York Jew. And the person I said it to said, "And what are you?" I'm like, okay, point taken. I can't listen to myself speak. And I don't look at myself on camera either. Like, we'll be filming this and I probably won't watch it. I might listen to it, but I probably won't watch it. So how do you work with somebody who says, "I don't want to be on film. Oh, for whatever reason, I look terrible. The lighting's bad. My voice cracks. I get thirsty."
right.
How do you?
Well, first of all, if someone doesn't want to be on video, I'm the last person who's going to convince them to be on video. It's like, okay, I don't want to make you feel that uncomfortable that you could write something. I'll work with you. I'm a fiction writer, and I toy with the idea of writing a memoir. I've written little sections, but I write, and I used to write for a newspaper. So we could do writing instead. But if people are just like, well, let me try it, I think the most important thing is just to have a conversation like we're having. Just to have a conversation, tell them, I used to work with someone who always asked, "How did you get in trouble as a kid?" I mean,
That's a great question.
that brings up that people laugh and they have memories, and and then you can start from there. It doesn't have to be like a serious interview. It should be enjoyable. If it's not enjoyable, then I wouldn't want them to do it, really.
I think for me, one of the easiest things is knowing I'm having a conversation with somebody. It's, speaking with you or any of my guests, it's a conversation. And so doing the memoir with you would be having a conversation. And it's talking to you as if I might talk to my children or my grandchildren and telling them the story.
Right, exactly.
So that makes it easier. And I
Right.
love that you can incorporate the old, Super 8 movies. I have tons of those somewhere.
Right.
Or photos. Which
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we do start with a conversation, and that's you're so right, with that, Amy. And also, if they don't want to be on camera the whole time, they're not going to be on camera. It's not. I don't want to make a talking head kind of piece, right? So I cover a lot of the video at times when appropriate, just as I did in that little video you showed before, with photographs. Film footage is great also. So yeah, I mean, they're not going to be on there the whole time, and it shouldn't be high pressure. We take breaks, we laugh, we tell jokes, go off camera for a while. It's not, it's not CBS.
that's good to know. Just trying to think what I want to ask you.
But I actually wanted to say something too, if that's okay. So I listened to one of your interviews, your podcast, when you interviewed an innkeeper from Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was wonderful, wonderful podcast. I learned a lot, and I love what he said about his inn being small versus a big hotel chain or a big hotel, like the different services you can provide. And I think what a small business like Video Memoir Creations offers is just a very small personal service where I get to know you. I don't have to work with a template. It's not like, now I do have on my website a page that says our offerings, and I have like 3 different things, but that's not set in stone. That's why I say, like, we start with a conversation. Well, what is it that you're looking for? How long do you want this? Who is it for? What do you want to tell? Basic questions like that. And then we can go into, well, how long should it be? What the format will be, et cetera. But I like what he said about you get much more personal service at an inn versus a hotel chain.
Exactly. And that's why working with small businesses is so much nicer. You also know who you're working with, as opposed to, a large, a TV station, for example. It could be any one of 50 camera people. And I don't know how many reporters they have, but a lot of reporters in the field. And, everybody is different. So they get the interviewee gets a chance to meet you and to talk with you and to get to feel comfortable, and then to work with you. And if they don't feel comfortable, then they can make that decision too. Although I can't imagine anybody not feeling comfortable with you. You certainly make people feel comfortable, at ease. I don't feel threatened at all by, some people who interview are threatening. They're, much more upfront and forthright with their questions, and there's a nice ease to talking with you. It's like talking to a friend, and that's what I would want in my memoir, to be able to talk to a friend about it.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. The thing about interviewing, is it's not about me. It's about them. So if if I ask a question that's not of interest, then let's move on. What do you want to talk about? What's important to you? Because this is about you. This is your time. You're paying for this. It's your time. And one more thing about that Oregon man. I'm sorry to be so fixated. I was just fascinated with the podcast. I love that they give popcorn out, and it would be so appropriate for me to do that because it's film, but,
You could do that.
I could do that.
You could send a little bag of popcorn to people if you're not doing it in person.
Right, that's true.
You just don't want them eating it while they're trying to talk.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's like I tell people in the intro to this is to grab a beverage, find a comfy place, take a deep breath, and listen in. I don't tell them what to drink or when to drink it or to sit, because a lot of people are listening to podcasts in cars. So wherever they are, just be comfortable and present, which is what you want to.
Am I allowed to give a shout out to somebody now?
Sure.
Okay, so I've been on LinkedIn and I met this wonderful woman on LinkedIn, and I just wanted to. She's been so amazing. She did a new member spotlight or a new business spotlight on me. Her name is Valerie Roskin Tews, Tews, and she's just been wonderful. And the spotlight that she did, she asked me questions and I answered them. Then she, embellished it a little bit here and there with, little things. And when I read it, I said, "Wow, I want to hire Judy. She sounds so good." I wanted to thank her in public. So thank you.
Is that something that is available to the public? Could somebody see the spotlight that was written and read it?
You know what? I'm going to thank you for reminding me. It's on LinkedIn, but I'm going to put it on my website. Yeah, thank you for that.
That would be great, because I'm guessing that we've got some decent number of followers who are not on LinkedIn.
Okay, I will put it on my website as soon as we are done today.
So what would you tell somebody who's thinking about creating a memoir with you? What are the questions they need to think about? And then finally, how do they get in touch with you to arrange for this?
Okay, I would tell them to just sit with a piece of paper or keep a notepad with them for a couple of weeks and just let their minds wander. Like, what stories do they want to tell? What's important in their lives? Is there someone in particular they want to interview? Maybe it's not about them. Maybe it's about their aunt so and so. And just start thinking about what's important in their lives. What messages do they want to impart to their children? What memories do they have? Photographs that have been in the cabinet drawer or whatever for a long time, and take them out, look at them, share them with their kids, talk about certain people that were important to their children, perhaps, or important to them as when they were young, and just make notes. Just think about it. Just mull it over for a while. And then if they have an interest in having this on tape, we could gather these notes that they, excuse me, these ideas that they have written down and see what comes out of it. See if we can shape a story out of it. And in terms of how to get in touch with me, it's my video. My website is videomemoircreations.com. You have it on the screen.
I see it right down there.
And my email, they can either go scroll down to the bottom of the page and sign up for my newsletter, or there's a contact page on my website. Maybe that's the best thing, the contact page.
Okay. And how do I know that this is what the next best thing for me to do is? Am I going through a specific thing in my life that's making me say, "Oh, I want to create this with Judy," or what's the impetus?
Well, I think that's a great question. It's a hard question to answer. I think it probably is different for every person. Sometimes it takes the death of someone in a family to realize, oh gosh, I wish I had asked that person, sat down with that person, had a real conversation with them about things in their lives, or thank them for how they impacted my life, So it's, sitting down and thinking, well, maybe now's the time to start thinking about talking to people who are older, or maybe just, I know for myself, I'm the last person that I think about when it comes to video memoir because I'm doing the video memoirs, but my children want to hear my stories too and my mother's story. And, my mother was in the Marines and she played piano for the chaplain in the Mojave Desert. Well, that always gets a laugh, Well, they probably want to hear more about that. Or my father, his experiences. Unfortunately, he didn't tell me about when he was at the Nuremberg trials, but there were other experiences that he had. He was involved with the Air Force, and so people, you get to a certain age, you realize these stories aren't going to be here forever. You're not going to be here forever. Or if you're in sandwich generation, your parents aren't going to be here forever. People live far from each other these days,
You brought up after the death of somebody and sort of a little bit of remorse for not having asked those questions. I want to suggest that maybe if you hadn't done it before, that's the time to do it, because there might still be other relatives or other people who could be interviewed to tell you those stories that, like in your case, your father never told you, but maybe somebody else might be around who could share those stories with somebody.
That's so true. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. That's very important.
And that's for any of our listeners, that, just because a loved one has died doesn't have to close off the memories. And it doesn't have to close off the possibility of creating a memoir for them. It wouldn't be an autobiography, it would be a biography. But definitely.
That's very true. That's very, very true. My father was a big brother, and his little brother, who's now, a little bit older, he was 15 when my father was his big brother. His sister just wrote to me on Facebook telling me how important my father was to her son. And I went, that's amazing, So these connections happen, and it's really important to take advantage of them when they come up and ask questions and, record them.
I think that would be a lot of fun and very rewarding to have that. And of course, our own memories are just ours. I mean, two people can be in the same exact situation and have completely different memories. So in the case, for example, of a parent, two children remember an event that happened in their lives completely different. So it would be interesting to have them come and share that event about a family too. What downloaded to me was the image of a jigsaw puzzle, which has been coming up in my thoughts a lot lately. And I saw you piecing together different memories and stories and photographs and videos and music as different puzzle pieces coming together to create a beautiful memoir for somebody. And, with the holidays just having happened, Valentine's Day coming up, this is a perfect time to think about creating something that will last way past any of us and can be handed down from generation to generation. So Judy, thank you so much for sharing, for being my guest. And I hope that many of our listeners will contact you and create their own memoirs with your help.
Amy, thank you. Amy, thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. So again, my guest was Judy Seaman of Video Memoir Creations. And thank you very much. And I hope that you'll join us again soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
If you liked what you heard on this podcast and want to hear more, please follow us and tell your friends. You can also find me on Facebook at Amy Lindner Lesser, Grief to Growth Life Coaching, and on LinkedIn at Amy Lindner Lesser.